We have finally made it to our last review packet, and today we are going to talk about a few different things. The first thing we're going to talk about is the quadratic formula. We are going to look at quadratics in word problems as well as quadratics not given a word problem. Then we're going to look at average rate of change, sequences, and we're going to finish up with a review of key characteristics when looking at a graph. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the quadratic formula, and you need to remember that your equation must be equal to 0 before you do anything. So if I'm looking at number 17, we have 4x squared plus 43x plus 30 equals 0. So because this is equal to 0, I can go ahead and start using the quadratic formula. To use the quadratic formula, I need my a value, my b value, and my c value. The good thing about using the quadratic formula is you do not have to find your greatest common factor first. You can just jump in with your a, b, and c value without worrying about the greatest common factor like you do when you're factoring. The quadratic formula is given to you right here, and it's also given to you on your formula sheet. Notice that when using the quadratic formula, you're solving for x. And that x value is very important because it represents your x-intercept of the parabola, which we also call solutions, roots, or zeros. So there's 4 different ways they could ask you the same question that require you to use the quadratic formula. So make sure you understand that if they ask you for the roots, use the quadratic formula. If they ask you for the zeros, you can use the quadratic formula. Both of those questions are asking the same exact thing. Okay, so now that I have my a, b, and c identified, I can just plug it into the quadratic formula. So I have x equals negative 43 plus or minus the square root of 43 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, or 2 times 4. Now, the hardest part about this is typing it in the calculator accurately. The first thing you have to do is put a fraction in the calculator. So alpha y equals enter gives you a fraction. Again, you will not have my poster when you're doing this on the EOC, so make sure you memorize those calculator tips and tricks. So we have negative 43 plus the square root of 43 squared minus 4 times 4 times 30 all over 2 times 4, and I get negative 3/4. So x equals negative 3/4. Go up, highlight it, go all the way back to where the plus is, change it to a minus, and we get x equals negative 10, and those are my 2 solutions for this quadratic. Now we have a number 18. It says 2x squared plus 3x equals 20. The first thing I have to do is get this equal to 0. Unlike number 17, number 18 is not equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. 20 is not a like term to 2x squared. 20 is not a like term to 3x. So I'm going to write it as 2x squared plus 3x minus 20 equals 0. And now I have my a equals 2, b equals 3, and c equals negative 20. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Alpha y equals enter. And we have negative b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And I get 5 halves. So x equals 5 over 2. Go up, change it to a minus. X equals negative 4. Good. So when solving just a regular quadratic, it's very straightforward. You just plug it in the quadratic formula and the calculator gives you your answer. Word problems are a little bit different. So we're going to read number 19. It says Jacoya tosses a coin off a bridge in the stream below. The distance in feet the coin is above the water is modeled by the equation y equals negative 16x squared plus 96x plus 112, where x represents the time in seconds. How much time will it take for the coin to hit the water? So they're asking how much time, which x represents time. So they're asking me to solve for x when the coin hits the water. The height of the coin, so if you drew a picture and the coin is thrown off the bridge and it hits the water right here, the height of the coin is 0. So you have 0 equals negative 16x squared plus 96x plus 112. And they want to know what x is when y equals 0, or how much time it takes for the height of the coin to be equal to 0. So I'm going to do the same thing. I have my a value, my b value, and my c value. Alpha y equals enter. Negative, not parenthesis, 96 plus the square root of 96 squared minus 4ac all over 2a is negative 1, so x equals negative 1. And my other answer is 7. X equals 7. Now, because this is a word problem, I'm not going to have two answers for this specific word problem because my unit is time in seconds. You cannot have negative seconds, so my final answer would be x equals 7 seconds. I chose the positive answer because you can only have positive time values, and I made sure to include the unit. So always double check your word problem to see if they included a unit. If not, you could always use the unit. You could just put units. You could have put the answer 7 units and still get the question correct. Okay, moving right along, we have number 20. It says the profit P in dollars gained by selling X computers is modeled by the equation P equals negative 5x squared plus 1000x plus 5000. How many computers must be sold to obtain a profit of $55,000? So what they want us to do is they want us to plug in our profit of $55,000. Profit is represented by P. So I would have 55,000 equals negative 5x squared plus 1000x plus 5,000. In order to use the quadratic formula or to solve this at all, I have to get the equation equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 55,000 from both sides. The reason why I'm subtracting 55,000 from 5,000 is they are like terms. Both of these terms are considered constants. That's an important vocabulary word. For all of algebra, a constant is a term without a variable. So I would have negative 5x squared plus 1000x, none of that changed, and then 5,000 minus 55,000 is negative 50,000. So now I have my a value of negative 5, my b value of 1,000, and my c value of negative 50,000, and I could plug this into the quadratic formula. So because the quadratic formula is right up here, I'm not going to rewrite it for you. Alpha y equals enter. Negative 1,000 plus the square root of 1,000 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times negative 50,000 all over 2 times negative 5. Just because our a, b, and c values are really large does not mean you can't use the quadratic formula. Our a, b, and c values could be decimals, they could be any number whatsoever. The quadratic formula always works. And I get x equals 100. Go up, change it to a minus sign. And I get x equals 100 again. That tells me that this graph right here only has one x-intercept, which would be at the value x equals 100. So my final answer would be 100 computers. After the company sells 100 computers, they will reach a profit of 55,000. I hope that was a good review for quadratic formula. In the next video, we'll be talking about average rate of change, which I guarantee will be on the EOC.